Blog Talk Radio.
Are you ready? The champ is here! It's just a man! Give me a hell yeah! What the rock is cooking? To be the man, you have to be the man! Big Papa Pump! It's your hookup! Falling! Holla! In the air! Woo, woo, woo! Cup of coffee in the big day.
And coming to you from the Blog Talk Radio studios, folks, you know what it is. It's Saturday, October the 1st, and welcome to the latest edition of Working the Marks here. And I am New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist, Fernando Uribe, and he is New Jersey's premier wrestling analyst, the PBR superstar, the great Patrick Rivera. What's going on, PBR?
Chilling, man. Yo, that new theme song, I walked through my apartment, and then I got right to my room and shit. And my kids are going crazy because I walked through the apartment, and then I ended up bam, in my room for the show. So it's kind of like me walking through the crowd, like the Shield used to. My little Mark moment to get myself souped up. I was actually sitting by my window. As you know, Fernando, it's a rainy day over here in the county of Hudson, and I was writing some poems by the window, just staring at the rain because I'm that kind of a guy. And I just realized, hey, it's time to work the marks. So here I am, rock you like a hurricane. We got a great show for you.
That's right. And folks, you can always write to the show's inbox, which is workingthemarks@gmail.com. Once again, workingthemarks@gmail.com. Write to us what you like about the show, what you don't like about the show, whatever it is. Our inbox is always open, and it's always welcoming to everybody. Once again, workingthemarks@gmail.com. Again, a shout-out to D. Rotten for all the good work he does on this show, not just with our theme song, but monitoring the inbox and certainly helping us with our social media here. Speaking of social media. That's and Famcast Media. Famcast Media as well. Shout out to them for partnering with us here every week on Blog Talk Radio. Also, folks, check out our social media here on Instagram. Check out the show at working_the_marks. And also check out our own Instagram as well. Check out the PBR superstar at Patty Rican. And also check out my Instagram at the Fernando Zone. When I'm not being shadow banned, hey, I get some stuff on there. I get some likes and follows.
Yawn.
So does Patty Rican. And, of course, also on Twitter, folks, make sure you check out the show at working_marks. And certainly when you think about our own Twitter, make sure you check out the PBR superstar at Patrick SKVM. And when Joe Dorsey's not shadow banning me on Twitter, check me out also at the Fernando. Well, it's true. These motherfuckers shadow ban us. What can I tell you? At least
okay, but then don't violate community standards consistently, and you won't get banned. It's that simple. Jeez.
Well, I don't know. I don't know.
This is worse than the Peacock thing with you.
Any little thing, which we'll get to in a little bit because I still refuse to pay the additional $5. Okay, but. Folks, check it out. Sharing is caring. Make sure you always share our stuff on all your social media platforms. And, of course, check out all of our episodes at Working the Marks. Once again, blogtalkradio.com/Working the Marks. Hey, episodes can be listened to from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet. Folks, we're going to mix it up a little bit this week. We've got a great guest coming up in just a moment. But I do want to start the show, unfortunately, on a somber note. We learned yesterday on Friday, September the 30th, that a wrestling legend passed away. A guy that, let me tell you, he's a guy that, we've seen on the WWE Network, even before that, on tapes, whether we read issues of Pro Wrestling Illustrated. Japanese legend, the great Antonio Inoki, arguably, ladies and gentlemen, the most influential and one of the most important figures in the history of Japanese professional wrestling passed. As a matter of fact, earlier today he passed, and it's interesting where, Inoki started wrestling at the age of 17, coincidentally on September 30th, 1960. And he was a guy that had so many iconic moments. The boxer versus pro wrestler match against the late, great Muhammad Ali, which was viewed by millions of people. And to be honest with you, it was sort of a prelude to the future of the popularity of what we know today as mixed martial arts. So that was an amazing moment. Inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame back in 2010. just an influential figure, man, and really nice of Paul Levesque, the chief content officer for WWE, to have a tribute for him last night at Smackdown. Your thoughts, man, real quick before we get to our outstanding guest today on the passing of Antonio Inoki.
I mean, it's really, really huge. It's felt, I think, by everybody, not just in Japanese wrestling, but every fan of Japanese professional wrestling, every person who ever wrestled in Japan, every person who ever wrestled for New Japan. Inoki, as you said, was a martial artist, was a professional wrestler. He was even a politician at one point.
Yep.
The guy was just immensely influential, and just a guy who basically tied a lot of things together, and I think was really ahead of his time and was a visionary because he saw the way things would trend. I mean, to have the guts to get in a ring, in any ring, doing anything with Muhammad Ali in his prime, you got to have some real cojones, brother. You know what I'm saying? And Antonio Inoki saw how that would generate interest, saw how that would draw people, and committed to it. And granted, it was a bit of a snooze fest, and he was just pretty much in the guard the whole time, and Ali didn't even want to touch him. But, regardless of that, it's important in history. And, what you said, to your point of influencing mixed martial arts, it was really ahead of its fucking time. Definitely a really sad passing. Obviously you saw everybody that walked through the doors of New Japan Pro Wrestling paying their respects, as well as New Japan, WWE. I mean, and even his relationship with Vince, and things that they were able to influence each other on. I mean, it's pretty big. So, really, really sad, but rest in peace, Inoki-san.
Absolutely. And, what's interesting for a lot of people that don't know, obviously he had success in the world of professional wrestling. He did sell his stake in New Japan Pro Wrestling in the early 2000s, and he stepped into the political arena. He served 2 terms in the House of Conciliators, which is, again, the sort of the Japanese equivalent of what we consider, the United States Congress. And, he was first elected in 1989. And what was interesting, though, Pat, most people don't know that during his term in the House of Conciliators, he actually traveled to Iraq, and he met with Saddam Hussein and successfully negotiated the release of Japanese hostages at that time, where it was a very volatile area in the Middle East because of Saddam Hussein with Iraq. Served a few terms. He stepped away from politics in 2019, but still remained a very influential presence, even in professional wrestling, because of his stature, because of just the names like Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, people that traveled to Japan that met with Inoki. I mean, it's a sad loss for professional wrestling for sure. And certainly, if you are not familiar with his work, I mean, folks, go to YouTube, check out some of his matches, check out his promo work, check out just his presence and how he looked next to so many professional wrestling legends. And it was just something that people knew to respect Antonio Inoki. It was as simple as that. So, folks, we're going to do something different this
Bern,
week.
Just to add something to it real quick, sure, before you change over there. Inoki was known for his big slap. I mean, he would slap everybody. He would slap all the young lions. I mean, it's crazy. You name anybody that's been in the business in the last 30 years, odds are Inoki slapped them. And I know that you and I disagree a lot about, some things in the world, but I think one thing we could agree on is that everybody deserves a good Inoki slap nowadays.
Oh, absolutely. Believe me, I'd like to clone him, and I know a few people that I'd like to have an Inoki slap on, but absolutely a legend and certainly one of the more influential people from the 20th century going into this century. Really, it still stands the test of time in pro wrestling. Folks, a little something different this week. We'll get to the news in just a little bit. We'll break down the ratings this week. Some numbers, not so much of a concern for WWE or AEW, but definitely some telling signs about what's going on right now in the ratings. We'll also talk about on this day in professional wrestling history. But first, folks, a little something different here this week. We got a prominent guest on. He is the host of the Rican Wrestling Talk podcast, which you can check out on Spotify. It's very informative. It is just an amazing amount of content you get from the Rican Wrestling Talk podcast. Folks, he joins us this week here on Working the Marks. He's the great Luis Rodriguez here on Blog Talk Radio. What's going on, Luis? How are you?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on, guys.
I appreciate it. So, Luis, when we talk about the Rican Wrestling Talk podcast, I mean, What was your epiphany to get it started? You know, what's your love affair been with professional wrestling for the better part of your adult life, I'm assuming? You know, how did that come to bear in creating the Rican Wrestling Talk podcast?
Well, I mean, most of the time I spend a lot of my free time having conversations with Patrick about wrestling, and I've always thought to myself that our conversations could that if people listen to them, that they would understand like our love and passion for the business and stuff. And, you know, just being a fan of the actual sport for over 30 years, I mean, it's a big deal to me, and I just want to share some thoughts on how I feel about the state of today's wrestling, and, you know, having a unique insight and actually like training and being in a ring and taking bumps. And I just think that there are two different ways to look at it from the fan perspective as well as the worker.
Pat, you there?
Hello? Yeah, I'm here, man. I'm sorry. I felt like Joe Biden when he was looking at the teleprompter and he didn't know what the hell to do. So yeah, no, man, I've known Louis for a very long time. We go way back to like, you know, our teen years. We were both decorated backyard wrestling champions. Back in them days, we used to drag around, you know, smelly mattresses and like jump off of things onto it and suplex each other and all this other stuff. So, you know, me, him, and my cousin, it was always kind of in our heads, as well as, you know, a certain gentleman you and I know, and a certain housing inspector you know as well, that used to join us. And it was just a bunch of us just going around wrestling, doing our shit. We'd end up in like a million different places. We were in a Doric temple, like a Freemason temple at one point. We would wrestle in parks everywhere. You know, we would find our own sheetrock, you know, or like whatever garbage. We had like drop ceiling. When we found a bunch of drop ceiling, those were our tables. You know, we would like wedge it between like a garbage can and like a fence, and then we just power bomb each other through it. So it was something that we really, really loved. We were always watching it. We were always into it. You know, obviously it's the height of the Attitude Era. I mean, like everybody was just fucking glued to the TV watching the gimmick. And, you know, from there, we always kind of held that intention, I think the three of us, that we were always going to get in the ring and actually do it. And that was something that we always wanted to do. And then, you know, I ended up training at JAP with Bernie. He ended up training at JAP with Bernie. But something happened, basically, where, like, we ended up going to JCW instead, and we trained over there. And then Louis trained over at JAP. But we did work out a couple of times, I'm pretty sure, in Bayonne, right?
Yes, yeah, Charity Hall, man.
Yeah. So we definitely got in there and we trained.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, again, you know, Louis, you know, when we talk about podcasts like this, and, you know, I would argue the great thing about working with Pat on this show is the dynamic that, listen, I'm very unapologetic about it. I'm the mark here. I try to be as, I guess, intellectually honest on this show. I try not to let emotions get the better of me. Pat's the worker. Louis, clearly you're again, a worker as well. You know, we look at pro wrestling now, and I think growing up watching it from the Attitude Era and certainly learning what we've learned about it, right? I mean, again, for a large part of our adolescence, you know, it was still real to us, right? Just like we used to believe in Christmas and Easter Bunny. But, you know, as we got older, we started, again, and the internet, I think, has helped us to some extent, too, whether it's been websites, dirt sheets that have evolved from tangible paper into websites and blogs, and now, obviously, with social media, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, again, started in the mid-2000s. We saw Twitter come into existence in about 2011. We saw Instagram in 2012, TikTok, whatever, Snapchat. I mean, arguably, like, our knowledge, or at least some people would like to claim that our knowledge of pro wrestling is really enhanced because of these apparatuses. But I would argue, too, man, that, you know, it's kind of not left any element of surprise anymore. I think that, unfortunately, these great technological advances have been great for us to some extent, but it's also emboldened, I would argue, a generation of marks to think that they know more than people behind the curtain. And I think that's a really toxic element about what pro wrestling is today, Louis.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you there. I think actually when we were younger, the dirt sheets weren't really informative, and they were more so like rumors. But nowadays there's so much stuff that leaks that there's no surprises anymore. And I believe that I believe that just like the Marvel fan base, that wrestling fans can be pretty toxic. If they will poo-poo anything that if they don't get what they want, and it's a big deal. It's something that I wish would go away. I wish there was a way to just stop spreading information on the internet, because I feel like one of the biggest things and the best things about pro wrestling is the surprises itself.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that so often the dirt sheets and I guess it's really just the fact that over time, and again, this, I'm basing this off of what I've seen, my own personal experiences with it, and then kind of just the way things trended in the business. But I remember a lot of people getting involved in the business that didn't want to give up being a fan. And when you get involved in the business, it's not that you stop being a fan. You just look at wrestling differently now, because now you're understanding how to try and monetize this and yourself. And that's interesting. It's interesting to learn about how all of that plays into the bigger picture. But a lot of people didn't want to stop being fans. So, yeah, when you go in and you're still a mark, you're going to behave like a mark. You're not going to act a certain way. And a lot of people, a lot of marks started to kind of rise in the ranks within the business. So you get these mark promoters, or you get a mark referee, or you get a lot of mark wrestlers. But a mark promoter, let's say, which we know a certain one, but a mark promoter, they're not going to book things in the better interest of what the company is or what it should be. No, they're going to book it according to what's going to pop the crowd, because that's what they want. They want the "This is awesome" chant. They want the "You still got it." They want all these chants, all this nonsense. They want the pop, right? But all of it, it's not sustainable, because the crowd gets fatigued. The crowd gets exhausted. And after a while, you got to doing a shooting star press, and then everybody's doing a shooting star press. Well, that shit's like a drop toe hold now. It's not a fucking shooting star press anymore. And people aren't going to care about it and pop about it as much as they could. And, to that point, you'll get dudes that'll do one high spot, and they're not fundamentally sound in all of the aspects of wrestling. They don't understand how to actually work. They don't know bumping. They don't know timing. They don't know any of this shit. They don't even know how to throw a punch, but they could do a fucking 450. So you know what? Throw him in the ring, have him do a 450, and fuck him if he gets lost. And that's basically what ends up happening with a lot of this, and it's kind of spiraled out of control over the last 20 years to have us where we're at now in wrestling. And now, every Tom, Dick, and Jane with a show or a podcast, I like to call it a show because I think we're bigger than just a podcast, they're out there pining and acting like they know something without ever taking a fucking bump in the ring. And that's no offense to somebody like you, Fernando, but you have respect for what the business is about and the people that have been a part of the business. And that's huge. And a lot of these people don't.
Mm-hmm. No, it's interesting you bring up, both of you brought up some really good points right now. And one I wanted to dissect real quick, because Pat's knowledge about holds and the presentation, I get a lot of flack sometimes online because I'm probably the only Impact Wrestling fan in Hudson County. And I watch Impact Wrestling. I have for 20 years. And it's interesting because every Thursday on Access TV, they'll show old Impact pay-per-views leading up to the weekly show at 8 o'clock. And I'll never forget, this is 2005. It was No Surrender. And just the vignette of, this person's fighting Petey Williams, who arguably, possesses the most devastating hold in professional wrestling, the Canadian Destroyer. I'm like, wow, this is 2005, where this was viewed as the most lethal move in professional wrestling. And now you see 5 Canadian Destroyers in a match. I mean, obviously one company is more egregious about it. And to your point too, though, Louis, I think you said it perfectly about, the equivalence of the mark community of pro wrestling fans and fans of Marvel. Maybe not so much DC Comics, but Marvel. It's like this tribalism that's on steroids. It's like if we're not getting the outcome we want, then we're going to be fickle. We're going to sour on things. And you're absolutely correct. I'm a big MCU person. I'm still bitching and moaning to this day about the fact that Tony Stark shouldn't have died in Endgame. That broke my heart. But again, that's the fandom in me. And I think, unfortunately, pro wrestling exacerbates it almost on steroids because of how toxic it's become, Louis.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can turn on somebody real fast. I mean, you look at it. A lot of people never talk about this, and it's something that it's always stuck in the back of my mind. if you remember back to WrestleMania 30, nobody was more popular in the business than Daniel Bryan, right? Now Bryan Danielson. If you go back and watch the Raw after Mania, which that used to be a big deal, not so much anymore. It might come back now with Triple H in charge. But when you go back to watch it, those fans at Raw were booing Daniel Bryan. He just won the title 24 hours ago. They're already booing him. They already want a new champion. Like, fickle's not even the right word for it. I would say, like, they just get bored at the blink of an eye.
But, Louis, is that more a product? And Pat and I have really dissected this on our show a lot, too, and obviously off the air as well. I just think that is a symptom of fans, not so much fatigue, but I think it's almost that syndrome of whether it's the guy or the girl, they're chasing the title. And once, again, there's only a handful of people that have been the chasers, and once they get the belt, fans don't turn on them, like Steve Austin, The Rock, fan favorites that for the most part, you know, even while chasing, they were hot, and once they got the title, they stayed hot. I don't have enough fingers and toes to name you the amount of people in the last decade that were chasing titles, from Dean Ambrose to Dolph Ziggler to Daniel Bryan, to your point, where for whatever reason the audience is just like, all right, well, that's it. He got the belt. All right, we're over it. And I think, again, that's a toxicity that is so evident in pro wrestling, especially for fans, that I think you can't put the genie back in the bottle. I think this toxicity is just so overwhelming, and it's never going to go away, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's
look,
clearly happening right now. I mean, you look at the White Rabbit stuff. There are people that are angry that it might be a certain wrestler, but like a month ago, they were clamoring for him, like, oh, let's bring him back. I don't want a pro wrestler because I don't want to spoil anything.
Yeah, I kind of see that, and you know what, man? Like, I think it's a byproduct again of like the marks being in the business and the marks wanting to dictate things, and you know them thinking that what they like is equating to good booking or drawing house or doing anything, you know. And it's really funny because I know a lot of marks that have actually booked shows and they've only booked one show and that's it, and it's done. It's done because it wasn't sustainable, because what they believe is good is not actually good. You know what I'm saying? And again, I think it's something like that. And to your point, Fern, like when you were saying, like with Steve Austin and with Rocky, right? They win the title. Everybody loved it. It was great. It was good. People liked it. They enjoyed it. But like we weren't as inundated with like dirt sheet writers and the internet and social media and all this toxic bullshit that feeds into that mentality. You know what I'm saying? It feeds into that shitty end of the fandom. I mean, you know, again, I also think, too, a lot of it is just a lack of awareness. Like, you know, when you go to a deathmatch wrestling show and it's in a bingo hall or it's in, you know, a small venue, you kind of understand why it's in a small venue, because it's a fucking niche product. You know, nobody's going to go there that wants to listen to fucking Taylor Swift and fucking, you know, go eat McDonald's. Probably eat McDonald's because, you know, we've got a pretty fat country. But you get the gist of it. It's not something that people who are into mainstream things are going to want to do. So why would you take something like that and put it in an arena? It makes no sense. But a mark would do that. A mark would do that because they have no understanding of what any of that is about.
I think that's a product too. I think, as you mentioned, about a niche audience, a niche product, and unfortunately, that has translated into the son of a billionaire having so much disposable income that he's taking that fandom and trying to kind of shove it down the throats of a specific demographic. And clearly, and we'll talk about the numbers later in the ratings for the week, but I think that this is what is creating this climate because of what AEW, and again, you know, they'll be celebrating their 3rd anniversary this Wednesday from Washington, D.C., you know, obviously the 3rd year of Dynamite and the inception of the show. I think that sort of mark fandom is doing a disservice to the product. And Louis, to your point about what you talk about on the Wrestling Week and Talk podcast is, I would say that, listen, I am ecstatic about Paul Levesque being in charge of content and creative. Pat and I have argued on this show constantly. I'm a guy that I love Vince for his contributions, what he's meant to the business. All the merch I have in my closet, it's WWF/WWE. So I'm eternally grateful to Vince because of what he did to bring the business from WrestleMania 1 in Madison Square Garden to what it's become, this worldwide billion-dollar conglomerate. But I, as a fan, bro, I was over Vince and his booking flow. And again, that's the mark in me. And thus far, you know, I really, really have enjoyed, and maybe it's the honeymoon phase, but, you know, for a lot of fans, Paul Levesque in charge of content and creative now, I think has changed the way WWE, the business model stays the same, but the presentation, I think, to some extent has changed dramatically, and I would argue for the better. Not that I hate Vince. Again, that doesn't mean I hate Vince. It just means that I was already over Vince. I think Vince stayed way too long, and I'm not going to say that I'm glad that because of what happened with these allegations, and that's what ultimately forced Vince out, but I'm thankful to some extent because I'm seeing a WWE that I like under Paul Levesque. How have you looked at it on your show, and what stands out for you about this, the change in the regime?
Well, the first thing I want to say is that I think it's one of the taboo topics that people don't talk about, but this is like, if you look at Raw and SmackDown right now, they've essentially become NXT Black and Gold 2.0. I mean, I know they had an NXT 2.0 already, but that's what this is. The only difference is that Triple H knows his money guy. So he's going to keep pushing a guy like Theory. He's going to keep pushing Roman Reigns. He's not just going to take the title off them and put them on a guy like Johnny Gargano. But he's bringing those guys back because we need fresh talent. And what I think that we're watching now is I think Triple H has used a lot of what he actually grew up in the business with. He's using squash matches, but he's also using these filler matches. Something that WCW did back in the day, like there's cruiserweight matches. Like if you look at, there's small feuds happening right now that aren't even top money makers, but they fill the audience so that way people don't get bored, and that way when the bigger guys come out, they can pop for them. You know what I'm saying? I think that Triple H does a really good job of using his own expertise to make sure that Raw and SmackDown are pushing forward. And it definitely shows. I mean, he's also using his expertise on how he knows what the fans don't want anymore, and he's not going to give you that anymore. Just look at how few and far between a guy like Omos has been on TV. Like, people don't want to see him. So he comes out, he wrestles 6 minutes, and then he's gone, you know?
Louis, you nailed it perfectly. Someone like Veer Mahan, good riddance. Send him back to NXT. I got no love for him. Yeah. I got no use for him. Good riddance. Send him back to NXT. Have him team with Sanga. Whatever. I'm just, those are the subtle little things as a fan, Mark, whatever, that I like. I know Pat's going to disagree with me, but I'm ecstatic to see the direction that Paul Levesque is going, man. Pat?
I'm so tired about hearing about this Vince crying. Everybody hating Vince McMahon when all this man ever tried to do was entertain you filthy marks.
But Pat, it's not hate.
This is a guy
critical. It's not hate. It's critical. I'm just being critical.
It's hate. It's hate, and it's been hate. And you're mad because he screwed the crybaby in the greatest work in the history of the business. So your feelings are hurt. Okay, that's what happened. That's what happened. That's what all this is predicated upon. Everybody's got some personal gripe with Vince because he didn't push your favorite. So what happened? Now at the end, obviously, yeah, it wasn't going to be great. It wasn't going to be gangbusters, but it's still fucking Vince McMahon. And look, anybody who knows me knows I don't really think Michael Jordan's the GOAT. That's my opinion, right? But, like, Michael Jordan, when he was on the Wizards, was still motherfucking Michael Jordan, and he was still putting up fucking 20 a game, okay? And Vince McMahon, whether people liked it or not, people were still tuning in, and they were still watching. And he generated, what, record revenue in one fucking year? Come on, man. Mm-hmm. You know, give the man his respect. I get it. You didn't like it, you know, whatever, all this other stuff. It's all good. But, you know, Vince McMahon is gone. I think he should be honored for his accomplishments. Whatever happened outside of the business, in the business, around the business, in and out, you know, whatever, that's his thing. But I appreciate Vince for what he gave to the business, how he kept the business alive. And without Vince McMahon, we wouldn't be on here like three assholes on the phone talking about this shit. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
So, Vince deserves a lot of credit. Triple H is on good faith money right now. Triple H right now is on good faith money, bro. He is running with the greatest intentions, and Triple H is going to have 1 full year to do this, right? And let's see how Triple H does for WrestleMania, how Triple H does for Royal Rumble, how Triple H does for all these things. I'm curious to see, because that's the big test. Monday Night Raw, SmackDown, Man, he's done fucking weekly television. Yeah, he's done PLEs. He's done stuff like that. But WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, those are things that have to fucking deliver. Those are things that the fans have had problems with. My only gripe with Triple H, though, is just the redundancy in the finishes still, and just nobody's getting a clean finish. Everything's always got to be interference schmaz. And, like, I think schmazes and interference, finishes have just been so fucking overdone that, like, people like, have used it as, to basically justify the fact that you want to keep the person strong. And that's fine. Or you're trying to book a character a certain way, a heel, let's say, right, that they're devious and they constantly have to do this shit. But there's nothing wrong with somebody going over fucking clean on somebody. It's a competition, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like George St. Pierre lost, and he was still motherfucking George St. Pierre. Ric Flair lost the title more than anybody else, and he's Ric Flair. So, I mean, that doesn't really fucking matter.
Lewis, to Pat's point about playing with house money, that's what Paul Levesque's doing right now. I think it's been working out with him. I think the ratings have been good. I mean, I understand that, and we've talked about it on the show is, listen, it's the fall. The NFL is arguably the most popular sport in North America. So on Monday nights, for decades now, Vince now into Paul Levesque, they understand that, hey, they're going to keep their audience to some extent. But sure, Monday Night Football now on ESPN as opposed to ABC for many years, is going to draw a certain audience. The NBA is back in really in 2 weeks. The NHL starts next week. We got the baseball playoffs. I mean, there's a lot of content to watch. Obviously, the fall TV schedules on all the major networks, streaming. I mean, certainly our ability to get entertained is very stretched out. But when we talk about, like, presently, you're looking at the product right now. You're looking at, and to Pat's point about, hey, these are big events coming up now. We got Crown Jewel early next month. Well, actually, not even that. Let's go to this month. We're in October. We got Extreme Rules in Philadelphia next Sunday. And this is something me and Pat have argued about excessively. It's one time of the year. It's Extreme Rules. Yeah, you're predicating on Philadelphia, ECW history. But for how many years, Lewis, did we watch Extreme Rules? It was like one Extreme Rules match, and it was just regular matches there. One time out of the year where everything at least has a stipulation, I don't think it's the end of the world, Lewis. I think one time a year, you got a gimmick for every match. Hey, man, I think that's what makes it special as a PLE, bro. Your thoughts, Lewis?
Yeah, I agree with you. Actually, I love that you brought up that point because if you look at every Extreme Rules match right now, they all have their own little gimmick.
Yes.
There isn't a single regular match happening, and that's something that I was talking about earlier where I said that, like, Triple H has learned what fans don't want to see. But to bring up Patrick's point, he has to sell 2 shows. And let me tell you, we talked about at the beginning of the show about fickle fans. Can you imagine how angry the fans are going to be if Cody Rhodes doesn't go over at the Rumble? Because they've already made their mind up. So this could be something where, like, Triple H faces a lot of backlash. And the problem is that people aren't paying attention. They're prisoners of the moment. If you're watching what Triple H is doing, he's constantly surprising you. So what if he decides he wants to throw a swerve in there? What if he wants someone else to win the Rumble? Fans aren't going to be happy with it. And there you go. They could turn on him just like that. So even if he fixed something like Raw or Smackdown and he's not able to deliver on Royal Rumble because he just felt like, you know what, I want to continue the surprises. I want to do something different. Fans will just turn and then all of a sudden the internet wrestling community will just start like poo-pooing everything he does.
Now, Lewis, I don't work backstage. None of us don't work backstage. But if we suspend disbelief for a minute, if the rumors are correct and the end game is next April in Inglewood, California, that The Rock challenges his cousin for the titles, right? Thus far, it's still both titles. How do you think that's going to work? Because normally the winner of the Rumble gets the title match at Mania. Does that mean The Rock's going to win the Rumble? Because if the end game is Cody coming back winning the Rumble, how does that fit into the dynamic of, if that's the goal, getting The Rock to WrestleMania to fight his cousin for the undisputed titles, how does that factor in there? I mean, is there a way to sort of maneuver this where Cody can still be relevant in the title picture, knowing that The Rock ultimately is the main event?
Well, see, that you mentioned the one guy. I believe that every wrestling fan, whether you're young or old, like if you bring back The Rock, it fixes everything. Now, when I make this comment about Cody Rhodes, I'm going off the fact that I don't believe that Rocky can get back. But if he does come back, that fixes everything. And you just kind of book like a big Seth Rollins versus Cody Rhodes match, and you just have it like that, like their final battle, until the title is involved in the future. But I think Rocky fixes a lot. He's just too big a name, and everybody loves him. And it sounds like every time you read a dirt sheet or you see anybody tweet about it, I mean, everybody wants The Rock back. So I think that alleviates everything.
Yeah, I agree. As far as the Extreme Rules things go, I get that you guys, prefer that, but like I just feel like less is more. I feel like those types of matches should be reserved for like long-standing feuds or like a main event. But that's just me. You know what I'm saying? Either way, I'm still gonna watch. I'm curious to see what H does with this. And there is technically only one Extreme Rules match at this show. But the Rocky thing, that could fix everything. And Cody is another one that could fix everything. But I think they're smart. If they're smart, and this is where I think that they're going to kind of go. I don't know. I could be wrong. But I personally don't feel like there's enough character work with Theory for him to become champion and it really make a difference or it sustain what's happening. I feel like he would be kind of like a transitional champion a la Randy Orton when he first won it. And I just don't think that there's enough there. But he's a very strong heel. And eventually they're going to have him defend that case. And eventually he's going to defend that case against Cody Rhodes. And Cody Rhodes is going to beat him for that case. And that's how I think you put the title on Cody. You do it after Roman and Rocky. Roman wins. Cody comes out. Cody cashes in. That's fucking huge. That's fucking huge. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Because if I presented you with both of those options, as presently constituted, which one would you take, Theory or fucking Cody? You know what I mean? Like, Cody's just more legitimate. Mm-hmm. It's just more legitimate. Mm-hmm. It's a better story, especially him coming back from one of the greatest matches I've ever fucking seen. And, him coming back to win the title for Dusty at WrestleMania, man, Hollywood couldn't even write that shit. You know what I'm saying? It's fucking great. And the motherfucker got a neck tattoo on top of it all. I mean, like, geez. Holy, come on. But yeah, I mean, wait, real quick, Fern. But Lewis, I heard, I kind of noticed you say something about Rocky. Why don't you think Rocky's going to come back?
There's just something that tells me that he would be back already. They stopped mentioning it so much. Like they went so far for the past year to every time Roman was interviewed, they'd ask him. Every time Rocky was mentioned, they'd ask him. I think that unless their plan is to wait till next month until Black Adam comes out and then or this month, I should say, and then just capitalize off that press, kind of like what they're doing with Logan Paul and Crown Jewel, then I just don't see it happening because what we're seeing is a transition with another company being bought in Warner Brothers, and they might need Rocky to like lead the way, and that books his schedule really fast. You know what I'm saying? Like he would have to clear his schedule because he can't just come in and win the Rumble and then go away. Fans want to hear from The Rock. One of the most important things about his character is his talking ability. The guy doesn't need to work. He can come out every Monday night and just talk, and that's all he needs to do. He doesn't need to wrestle all the way from Rumble all the way to Mania. That's all he needs. But if he wins the Rumble and he goes away, I just don't see them doing that.
Well, Lewis, this is the thing, and you said it perfectly because, we lived through that already. We lived through that in 2013. We lived through the fact that during CM Punk's historic run with the WWE title, they brought Rocky back. Remember, he had just joined the Fast and Furious franchise. We all know, again, notwithstanding whether or not we like the movies or not, but the point is that, he had joined that franchise. His stock really skyrocketed, immensely. I think no other thing has really helped catapult Dwayne Johnson into the stratosphere of being a mega movie star than that franchise. And what happened? It's going on 10 years ago, and he came back, challenged CM Punk for the title, and as you mentioned, he didn't have to wrestle. He just had to come out and talk. And that was effective in selling that feud. I didn't like that feud per se, but that's just me as a fan. But now, 10 years later, you're absolutely correct. I would argue that that's the same probably blueprint. Again, he can come back and just talk and maybe antagonize Roman, or maybe something as simple as hey, by the way, the reason your career skyrocketed or started is because I had to save your ass, in Philadelphia during the Rumble. And if it wasn't for me saving your ass, you would have never won the Rumble. Your career would have never taken off. So don't forget that you owe me, or something like that, Lewis. Maybe I'm being a little too creative. I don't know. I just think that you're right. It's something he can just come out and talk and really sell that feud. You're right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
guys, I also think that, and again, you're mentioning the whole Cena Rocky thing, right? Okay, yeah, not the best idea to make him a transitional champion. It should have been CM Punk title versus streak. I think that's more compelling to that WrestleMania match. That's way more fucking interesting. And you could have done Rocky Cena 2 again. That would have been fine. But the thing that's parallel about John Cena versus Rocky and Roman versus Rocky is that both of those guys, Cena and Roman respectively, were Vince McMahon's top guys for a long period of time and have been dependable, have been able to do everything. And in Roman's case, dude has leukemia. He fucking came back. He had to leave, during COVID, still came back strong. Now he's a heel. Now he's the way the fans wanted to see him for so fucking long. And I just think that, bringing back Rocky, even if it's for one match and a couple of Raws and Smackdowns, it's good and it works, because I think ultimately what that's doing is that's giving a favor, and that's making good on a promise to deliver a favor to two top talents. Because for John Cena, working with The Rock and beating The Rock for another championship reign, that's big for him, and that's a nice merit and a nice reward for what he's given to the business. That's a nice way to acknowledge him, if you will. But with Roman, it's the same thing, but it's even deeper, because that's his family, that's his cousin, and he saw him become what he became, and in his head, he was probably thinking, man, one day I want to wrestle him at WrestleMania. Now he has that ability to do that, and I think it's Vince making good on a promise to two of his top talents, and I think that that's something that is in the bank. I think it's done. But to Lewis's point, that Warner Brothers thing, that could be something that could change that dynamic altogether. We don't know, but either way, I think it is interesting in the promotional aspect of it with Black Adam. That's another thing we should look out for. So yeah, pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. To be quite honest with you, I think that Black Adam movie, I think it's kind of a lose-lose, because we've been lucky enough to see DC projects do single characters, and those are the best movies they produce. Well, let's say that this is exactly what happens. Black Adam turns out to be like the original Wonder Woman movie, and it just blows up everywhere and does this amazing money. Then Warner Brothers is going to be like, dude, we can't have you go wrestle. What if you get hurt? The last time he wrestled, he hurt himself in the match. Oh no, that was the Miami match. I'm sorry. And then actually tanked.
Lewis, no, that was the New York match. That was the New York match.
He got hurt here at WrestleMania 29, yeah.
Okay. So then let's say that the movie tanks. Let's say it doesn't do well. Then, why bring him back? You know what I mean? He's coming back with bad press. You know what I'm saying? We've had other wrestlers turn to acting that have actually pointed out that The Rock's not the best actor. You know what I'm saying? So if he goes to, if this movie comes out and they're like, dude, you're not Black Adam, you're The Rock. We're just watching The Rock playing dress up. He might come back to like we mentioned earlier, fickle fans who are just nah, we don't want to see this, And I do worry that with the new internet wrestling community, the way it's younger fans, I do worry that fans in attendance as well will just clamor so much for Cody. And don't get me wrong, I'm a big Cody Rhodes fan, but if my choices are Cody or The Rock, I'm going to go with Patrick's idea. I'm going to go with the fact that I want The Rock to be in the match. He's clearly not coming back to win the title. Roman has to go over. That's how you push, that's how you pass the torch. And then you have Cody come out after Roman gets booed out of the arena, and you have him cash in. That's the best way to go. I like that.
No, absolutely. Yeah, Lewis, great point. And Lewis, to your point about promotions, as you mentioned, now it's the pressure, going back to your point about the pressure on Paul Levesque to push two shows, it leads us to Crown Jewel next month. And notwithstanding how fans don't like Crown Jewel because of political dynamics, we're not here to talk about that. I'll do that on my Monday Night Show. But when he talks about Logan Paul, it's interesting to your point about the internet wrestling community, how fickle they've become about why is Logan Paul. But if you're being intellectually honest here, and that's what Patrick and I do really, really well on the show every week, is try to break down the positives from a business perspective. There's no way to even, sour on this show. I was having this argument the other day driving home from the Cowboys-Giants game at MetLife with a good buddy of mine, huge wrestling fan, and I had to sit there and not lecture him, but really kind of break down why this is a good thing from a business perspective. Like, there are more eyes on the product because of Logan Paul. Pat and I have talked about it off the air. I mean, he is literally kicked Joe Rogan off the number one podcast list right now online. And that's a big accomplishment because Joe Rogan has a really good audience. Logan Paul's podcast is immensely popular. The fact that he's going to bring more eyes to the product, that's the business model that WWE continues to get right. You don't have to like it, but whether it's subscribing to Peacock, right? And people that maybe don't watch pro wrestling, but I like Logan Paul. Oh, wow, he's going to be at this thing. Well, where's he going to be on? Oh, on Peacock? Oh, they have a promotion right now, $1.99 for a year, and then it goes back up to the regular price with, the 79 commercials you have to endure. Okay, well, guess what? People are going to subscribe. Maybe people are going to buy the pay-per-view outright if they don't want to buy Peacock and watch it as a PLE. It's a good business decision. You may not like it from a presentation perspective as a fan, but you can't argue the economics of it, Lewis.
No, I agree with that. And actually, I don't know if Patrick has brought this up to you in like a private conversation or not, but we just had a conversation this week about Crown Jewel. And I think people need to realize what happened a month and a half ago. What did Triple H and WWE just announce? That WrestleMania was in Philadelphia next year. Did you see how they had to promote it a year ahead of time? The Crown Jewel was already paid for. They already received their money for that event. They had to go. So why not capitalize and be like, all right, Roman's going to defend the title. We're clearly not going to have him drop it, just like Bray Wyatt did. So let's give him the most popular guy outside of wrestling, a guy who can actually work in the ring, who does a good job. So like the pay-per-view was already sold. They couldn't just back out of their commitment just because Vince McMahon isn't around. And that's to Patrick's point, that people that watch wrestling now, like, marks and fans, like, I believe that they're two different things. I believe they think that they know more than actual business. Like, you have to understand that things are already in the works, and you can't just be mad and call it blood money or whatever you want to call it, because it was already going to happen. Now, we might not ever get another Crown Jewel after this, and people should just be happy with that.
Pat, your thoughts?
Yeah, sorry about that, fellas. I have to step away a sec here. Man, to Lewis's point, man, like, I get exactly what it is, man. It's like, the check's in the mail. It's already been cashed. The money's there. Everything's good. Promote this show. Make it big. Take a guy that has, a variety of different fans, people that probably normally wouldn't even watch wrestling. You're attracting them to that. It's the biggest guy outside of, obviously mainstream stars in combat sports like in UFC, or in boxing, and you're putting him against the biggest guy in the business. Bro, people are going to complain. People are going to talk shit. Like, I love hearing the marks that are like, he doesn't deserve that, man. He doesn't deserve that championship opportunity, man. And it's just like, yeah, maybe in like, the fucking stupid little mentality that you have, the mark mentality, playing with your fucking figures and shit and, tickling your pee-pee to porn. But, at the end of the day, man, it's like money is what drives the business. Money is what's going to keep it going. Interest is what's going to keep the business going. Nobody was complaining about this shit when Cyndi Lauper was getting involved with Hulk Hogan, right? Nobody was complaining about this when there was any crossovers in the past, right? But again, all this shit kind of stems back to the mark culture, man. And it's all something that, just continues to infiltrate wrestling and be one of the worst aspects of it. And honestly, I think it turns fans off. It turns casual fans off completely. You know what I'm saying? Because nobody wants to go and sit at a show next to a person that probably smells like a dead cow. And, aside from that, you got to listen to them, and they're going to critique you in your opinions. And, they're going to ask you if you remember what the third match was at, Starrcade fucking 87 or something, and you're not going to fucking remember. So, they're going to think that, you're a total dork or something. Nobody wants to deal with that shit. Nobody. People just want to go. They want to pay their money. They want to be entertained. And to me, I think Logan Paul, Roman Reigns, That's entertainment. That's interesting. Let's see how the kid does. I said he has a high ceiling for a very long time. In my opinion, this is what the Paul brothers should have been doing from the beginning. But, they made their money other ways, and they got their recognition, and now here they are. So let's see it. I think the kid's going to do great, honestly.
No, and to Lewis's point, obviously, Pat, great points always. But Lewis, you raised an interesting dynamic here because you mentioned about, again, sort of booking in advance, scheduling shows, right? Obviously, it was announced that, unfortunately, the Toilet Bowl of America, Philadelphia, is going to have not just one night, but 2 nights of WrestleMania in that godforsaken bandbox in Philadelphia in 2024. But that's the vision. That's the business model that WWE does so well. Forecasting in advance, picking venues. I mean, again, I don't know what would prompt someone to want to go to Philadelphia, but that's another story for another show, Lewis. But again, it's that forecasting. It's that vision of planning ahead. To your point, yes, that check's in the mail. That contract's been set up for X amount of years, X amount of shows within a certain time frame. Who knows? Maybe Paul Levesque now, maybe Stephanie McMahon, Stephanie, Levesque and Nick Khan, maybe they're reevaluating the deal, right? Once it's due to expire, do they continue with it? I mean, the backlash was kind of somewhat, pretty strong when it first was announced. I think in the years since then, I think whoever doesn't want to watch it or whoever wants to opine politically, that's fine. But those shows have been, contractually already set. Who knows? Maybe Nick Khan and Stephanie will say, you know what, maybe it's not in our best interest to go back anymore. Maybe not. Maybe the Saudi government will say, hey, let's throw more money. We love these. Let's be honest, they're glorified house shows, right? In a huge stadium with tremendous production value and tremendous merch and gate. Who knows? They might continue it. So I think fans have to get over it, per se. I know there's a political dynamic that doesn't go away about that government and that regime, but again, it's business. And I think if Stephanie learned anything from her father is going where the money's right and where the gate is possible, where there's merch, where there's going to be online traffic, social media. I think it's a business model that's going to continue whether we like it or not.
Yeah, absolutely, Fern. I think so, man. I think that no matter what, no matter where we go, that's exactly what it's going to continue to be, man. And people can either watch it or not. You know what I'm saying? I respect people that want to protest against it and not watch it. That's fine. That's cool. That's understandable. But, at the end of the day, they're going to still continue to produce the content that they produce, however they choose to produce it, and you can watch it or not. So it's basically that.
Lewis, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, to be quite honest with you, I was thinking about it from a different perspective because if you think about what Brock Lesnar did, where he supposedly walked out, how do we know that Triple H, instead of giving this money back, and Stephanie McMahon, instead of giving this money back, how do we know that the Saudi government, when Vince McMahon stepped away, they decided to cancel the show? Like, without Vince McMahon, that's the guy we do business with. So we could have gone this way based on the fact that Triple H is like, I can sell your show. I can make sure that people pack it out and that it's the most talked about thing for the whole month. And that's where Logan Paul comes in.
Absolutely. And again, not to say that the roster's depleted, but where are you going? Again, there's still conflicting reports about Randy Orton. How healthy is he? Oh. That's a name that's been floated around about challenging Roman and having a program. We just saw the Castle show in Wales with Drew McIntyre. At some point, maybe Drew McIntyre will have a run at the title. That now's not the case. He's going to be in a feud with Karrion Kross, and that's great because we get to see Scarlett on TV. And Jesus, what heterosexual man doesn't want to see Scarlett on their TV? But those are things that. How do you pack a stadium? You've got to get a name that's going to give prominence and eyes on that show. And, Logan Paul right now is a hot commodity. So I think it's a win. I get wrestling fans are fickle. Oh, well, why not another Drew match? Look what it did at Wales. I'm sure if those matches will come again. I'm sure that, again, Triple H brought Karrion Kross back. You got to put him on TV. What better way to feature him than have him feud with arguably one of the biggest baby faces in the company, Drew McIntyre? The same thing with other decisions. Again, and Roman's being, they're being selective with Roman. He's not on every week. He's not going to be in Philadelphia next weekend. He'll be a crown jewel. The hype will start after Extreme Rules. I just think that there's a mechanism in place, Louis, that I think as fans, at least for me, you guys have been workers. You guys understand the wrestling dynamic behind the curtain. I don't. I'm only going by books and podcasts and YouTube and Dark Side of the Ring. I think this is the element that fans miss or don't understand about the business of wrestling as opposed to the production of wrestling. They're two different things, Louis.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, quickly to touch on the Roman Reigns and Drew McIntyre thing, Patrick made this point to me after the match because I was arguing with him about how I thought Drew should have gone over, and he points out this, it's just not Drew's time. And it made me think back to when Edge and Cena were feuding. Like, Edge probably could have been the face of the company, but Cena was around. You know what I mean? So I think that's and honestly, if anybody's paying attention, since Patrick points out, like a fan that might not know, like a match at Starrcade 87, if people are paying attention, Drew's never beaten Roman at a big event. So that's a bigger feud down the line. That's more story. That's just enhancing their story. So when he actually does beat him, it's going to be like a big deal.
Correct. Yeah, I think like
correct.
Oh yeah, no, just real quick, Fern, just to add to that, like, you know, little things like that are like something that could make for interesting stories, like somewhere down the line. You know, I wouldn't mind seeing Drew against Gunther. It looks like we're going to get Gunther and Sheamus again. That's going to be awesome. That's going to be on TV. If Sheamus goes over, that's cool. You know, if Gunther goes over, that's cool. Either way, they're taking, and you know, this was earlier one of Lewis's points, you know, like, what Triple H is doing so far, it is interesting. It is good. It's different. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, obviously, it's not a fucking 70-year-old man anymore. You know what I'm saying? Is what, you know, his ideas are different. We understand that. Doesn't defeat the greatness of the guy before him, but, you know, you have Imperium and the Brawling Brutes. Like, just that match with Sheamus and Gunther turned into something big between those guys. And granted, I'm not, you know, huge on the other guy in Imperium, but, not the announcer dude, the other one, but, you know, it all serves a purpose. It all serves a purpose, and it's all working right now. And then you got Theory and Gargano, that little subplot, that little feud that's kind of going on there, you know, a potential feud down the line. Then you got Rollins and Riddle. Then you got Owens, and whatever the hell Owens is doing, fans are going to want to watch it and see it. You know, and this is a guy, too, that was kind of dead in the water some years back, like kind of just there, you know, like not really doing anything. And he challenged himself. And he's just become so much better for it. And a lot of guys have. Sammy's the biggest part of the bloodline. That's insane. He's so huge now. You know what I'm saying? But this has kind of been stewing for a while because he's been such a good character guy for so long. And he's a trusted guy. And he's a guy that they could put him out there with celebrities. They could put him out there with, you know, top people. They could put him out there with anybody. They could put him in any spot on the card. And he's going to make it work. And that's just been great TV. But, you know, WWE, man, like, you look at their guys that are in prominent roles and all of their mentality is just top notch. And that to me is one of the biggest differences between WWE and AEW. You know, I mean, even the people that left WWE, you know, a lot of them that left and didn't come back or just went to AEW, you know, they're all kind of like just floating there. They're not really doing anything. And I think a lot of that has to do with their mentality because they're not willing to challenge themselves. They're not willing to look in the mirror and say, hey, what can I do to make you fucking better, cooler, and appealing to more people? And I think they just kind of fall back into the comfort zone, and that's what it seems like a lot of people are doing in AEW.
Oh, absolutely. Let's get to the news. Louis, I'd like you to keep you on here with us, help us dissect the news cycle a little bit. I want to get your thoughts, Louis. This week reported various outlets, apparently Vince McMahon is going to be the focus of a new documentary that's now in the works, Vice TV. A few different sources. Again, and folks, let's take with a grain of salt sometimes, whether it's PWInsider.com or Wrestling Inc. or others, they are reporting this week that they've confirmed with multiple sources who were interviewed for the project that it's going to air sometime in October, and it's going to cover sort of like the sordid circumstances that led to Vince McMahon exiting WWE. Now, Vice TV, obviously, for those of us that like Vice TV, I've loved Dark Side of the Ring. I think to some extent it has helped shed light on stories that maybe we haven't read about in some time, or stories that we haven't maybe heard about for years, if not decades. I think it's been a good show. Unfortunately, I know it emboldens the Marks to, well, you know, I know a lot about the business, even though they've never booked anything, they've never written a single script of anything. But apparently, Vice TV is also going to be premiering a series, as a matter of fact, on Tuesday called Tales from the Territories, which coincidentally, Dwayne Johnson's going to be an executive producer. And the series is going to focus on sort of like the once dominant regional wrestling promotions that, quite frankly, I think were featured all across the country, right? As sort of like the biggest things. The trailer, for example, talks about the Von Erichs and what they did with World Class Championship Wrestling in Dallas, Texas, Jerry Lawler in Mid-South in Memphis, talking about, other promotions. I think that's a great thing. But this dynamic about Vince, revisiting sort of the tragedies or the headlines that, came to shape Vince's career, back in 1994, the indictment for steroids, right? Hulk Hogan, testifying against him. Obviously, other things, we don't know. I'm interested to see, again, there's not a hatred of Vince. I think a lot of fans are looking forward to seeing what this consists of. But if it's Vice TV, it's going to be very critical, I think, and very, very scrutinizing of the legacy of Vince McMahon as opposed to, as fans, what he's contributing to the business. Are you looking forward to this?
I'm looking forward to watching it and seeing what it's about, but I agree with what you said earlier. I think it just emboldens fans, and I just think it's something that we, like, if the plan is for him to be inducted into Hall of Fame, in Philly, I think if they do something like this, they might have to push back that Hall of Fame. And as much as I guess I'm not a big fan of Vince, because he did buy WCW and didn't book Sting, so that's one of those things that I still hold a grudge on.
Thank you, Louis. God bless you for that. God bless you, sir. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. God bless you, Louis. Yeah. Please, go on.
But what I will say is I just feel like we should just, look, he walked away on his own. He could have been forced out. I think it's a big deal. I think it points out to the type of person that he might actually be outside of wrestling. He walked away on his own because he cared more about the wrestling business than he did about himself. And nobody's going to pay attention to that. All they're going to want to do is point out all of these allegations or whatever's happening or the money that he floated to whatever person to keep, people quiet. And I just don't think that that's anything that we really need information about. We've gotten everything we're going to get right now. There's been articles that have been released. Certain names in the wrestling community, like Dave Meltzer, guys like that, or Sean Ross Sapp, have pointed out what they're going to point out anyway. So, why do a Vice show on Vince McMahon so quickly? It's so fresh. Right now, people are forgetting about it. They're enjoying WWE, and to Patrick's point, they're enjoying what Vince left behind. But if you do that, then I think it just kind of hurts all the progress that WWE is making.
Yeah, I agree 1,000% with all of that. That makes a ton of sense, And again, I just think a lot of fans aren't going to really do that. To your point, Louis, there's a lot of salty, podunk wrestling fans that are mad that Vince bought them out, or that Vince owns the libraries. Well, that's just tough titties, man. That's life, And Vince is the man. Vince is the GOAT. He's the greatest fucking promoter ever. He's a billionaire. Yep. What, you think he's a church mouse? He ain't gonna get no pussy? You know what I'm saying? Pardon my French, people, but I feel like it's time for me to be honest about this, because it's a little exhausting, And I know Vice is gonna be super critical of him, but he's a fucking human being like anybody else, and he's flawed. And odds are there ain't going to be nothing all that fucked up outside of the Jimmy Snuka shit, because that's pretty fucked up. But, it's just going to be Vince getting fucking laid and doing whatever. And he didn't want to hurt Linda's political aspirations, regardless of whether they were still together or not. So, Vince did what he had to do. But, at least he walked away. At least he understood that, hey, my bullshit doesn't affect the business. And, I'm going to go out on my own terms. And that's exactly what he did. So, people could judge him all they want, but he's a human being like anybody else. And I'd like to see what all you people would do if you had that kind of power and that kind of money.
Well, and also, too, I think it lends itself to the fact that, is Vince McMahon the first millionaire/billionaire? Is he the first guy with money to get pussy in the history of pussy? Of course not. I find the sanctimony and the self-righteousness by a lot of wrestling fans of, oh, my God, this is so terrible, and I get it, there's an element of Me Too that's still pervasive within entertainment that obviously people are very vigilant about and aware about. I get all that. Obviously the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial this past summer, I think, helped kind of get a W for us guys, but that's another discussion. But I think that there's this blemish that people want to put on Vince where, hey, he's not the first guy of money and influence to want to sleep with his employees. Is it ethical? Of course not. No one's arguing the ethics here. But this is professional wrestling. Is he the first promoter to do that? Of course not. Did Vern Gagne not maybe bang a few of the female stars? I don't know, probably. Did, who knows? Was something going on in WCW, NWA, World Club? Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, Hugh Hefner did all his business too.
Yeah, again, I'm not arguing about the ethics or the morality here. That's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the impact that Vince had. And I think to Pat's point, we've been, and to your point too, Louis, we've been enjoying pro wrestling. We've kind of forgotten about the allegations that the Wall Street Journal and other news sources have documented. I think well over $10 million has been paid out of Vince's pocket. Now, again, where that money comes from, right? Because he's being compensated by the stock, which is, corporate. But and again, I'm not here to argue the legalities of it, but the point is that I think the fans that care about this and want to die on a hill about vilifying Vince are going to blow a load on themselves when this documentary comes out. And the fans that are kind of, really just having apathy about the whole situation are just going to say, all right, I'll watch it. But at the end of the day, I'm still watching pro wrestling. I'm still tuning in on Monday nights. I'm still tuning in on Fridays. I'm still tuning in on Tuesdays. And I think at the end of the day, I think the fans that are commonsensical and rational, hopefully those are the ones that are going to win out here.
Agreed. I agree with everything you said there. I have nothing to put into that.
Yeah. No, man, I just think that, look, the people that hate Vince, they've made their mind up. They're if they want to protest by not watching or by watching or by talking shit or by starting up a page, by all means do it. Just don't hurt anybody. You know what I'm saying? But, there's people out there that's it. That's their decision. And, Vince has hurt them a lot emotionally. He hasn't, pushed the people that he's wanted, or maybe he made a certain former legendary WCW wrestler lose to Triple H at WrestleMania, which was really the right decision, in my opinion. But, people who hate Vince are just going to hate Vince. So what are you going to do? You know what I'm saying?
Pat, it's funny you bring that up, Pat. And again, Louis, I definitely want to get you back on another show in the future because I want to break down with you. And after Vince stepped down, and Pat and I've had the discussions off the air, I'm one of those armchair bookers where I go back and I can select a plethora of scenarios where I would have booked things differently. So Pat and I differ a lot, where Pat would not change a single finish of anything Vince has booked in 30 years, which is mind-boggling to me. But maybe you and I will agree to disagree, but we'll talk about that on another show. But I think it would be very interesting, Louis, to get your take on that because, again, to Pat's point about, hey, maybe there's a fickleness about Vince because he didn't book a certain finish the way we wanted or didn't push certain guys. I'm with you, Louis. I love Sting. I grew up loving watching WCW Saturday Night on TBS, 6:05 p.m. Eastern Time, WCW Main Event, Worldwide. I loved it. I would have liked Sting presented better, but that's an argument for another day. But I think that's the fickleness that we get about Vince as fans, that we're going to like what we like, we're not going to like what we like. And I think somewhere in the middle, I think there has to be some sort of, compromise. Talk about promotions, Louis and Pat. Obviously, other news this week being reported. Certainly, we've been seeing this infusion of WWE NXT here in North America, fusing with the NXT UK rosters. Whether that's a cost-cutting measure, whether it's just a presentation production measure, I don't know. But it's going to be great to see for those people that don't watch NXT UK on Thursdays, getting that talent to North America and having them featured on NXT Tuesday nights. I think that's a win-win for pro wrestling fans, guys.
Yeah, I
think so.
Agree with that.
Yeah. I just to kind of expand upon it. I honestly think that was the plan all along. You don't go to Europe, you don't go to the UK, you don't go around there for so many years combing for all this talent and not eventually think to yourself, gee, I'm going to take these guys from Europe and I'm going to bring them to the U.S. and I'm going to make them stars. Like, that's the goal. And I think it's great. I think under the tutelage of Shawn Michaels and a lot of the talent and the people there, they're going to certainly be able to grow. And we're looking at potentially, some stars. I mean, not everybody's going to be big out of all these people. not everybody's going to make it to the main roster. But, regardless, I just think that, it's really a testament to NXT and the developmental system that it is, and how they've been able to create so many main event stars, and will continue to do so in the next 10, 20 years or the foreseeable future.
Lewis, your thoughts?
No, I agree with that. I do agree that there's not going to be a lot of talent that's going to be able to get over on the main roster or even on NXT unless they're pushed a certain way, because I think it seems like they have their talent that they want to put over. But you can definitely tell, fans are excited about it, and I think it definitely makes sense. And I agree with Pat how, I think that was the plan all along. I don't think that they were ever going to just keep NXT UK going, because if you look at even some of the women like Toni Storm or Rhea Ripley, they won their titles, they lost their titles, and they came right to NXT Black and Gold. I mean, that was exactly what they were planning on doing. And if you look at a guy like Gunther, Gunther was so big in NXT UK, and he was pretty much the whole NXT at that point. Like, he was the biggest name. But look at what he's doing on SmackDown right now. Like, if there's guys like that can come over and help further the business, then I think that they'll be used properly. But honestly, I think merging the two NXTs is the way to go.
I'm with you guys. I think it's a good move. It's again, like anything else, I think it's a business decision, cost-cutting move as well. And to Lewis's point, there's only so much you can push in terms of talent. Some people are going to get over organically with that crowd. Some are not. Switching over to AEW, here's some news, those guys. Obviously, coming up on AEW Rampage next week, as AEW celebrates its 3 years on the air on the Turner Network systems on TNT and subsequently TBS. Coming up, and there's been some whispers, right? Some AEW stars maybe having buyer's remorse here about going to AEW, now knowing that Paul Levesque is now overseeing creative in WWE. Apparently, a career versus a mask match has been added next week on AEW Rampage, as Andrade El Idolo will be facing Evil Uno, and Andrade is putting his career on the line. Now, again, maybe it's a gimmick, maybe it's a work. Who knows? Unmasking Evil Uno, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. But it kind of lends a little suspense into, if the whispers are true and Andrade would like to go back to WWE, he's certainly, again, I grade for a living working in academia, Lewis. If I had to give a grade to the way that Andrade has been presented or booked in AEW, I'd give Tony Khan a certifiable F, among other bookings he's had that I would grade also as an F. If it's a work, so be it. But if this is a way for kind of getting, Andrade out of AEW back to WWE, I'm all for that. But that's sort of big on the cycle this week.
Yeah, I've noticed that it seems like a lot of news has been circulating that wrestlers are upset with their booking and stuff. But I feel like it's bigger than it's being talked about. Pat mentioned something earlier how there's a Mark that's running the business, and you can tell he has no wrestling mind backstage with them helping him. And he's kind of that guy, if you have ever had a boss at a lower level job where this guy was right next to you on the line, and then he's like, if I ever become boss, this is what I'm going to do. Well, that's exactly what Tony Khan is doing. He's booking it like the way if he was playing with wrestling action figures. He's not presenting guys properly. He's not using wrestlers that should be used. Me and Pat talk about Adam Page all the time. The guy is over, and you can tell he is. Can you imagine if Triple H got his hands on a guy like Adam Page? He'd probably be the biggest guy in WWE. I wholeheartedly believe that. Tony Khan has made a lot of mistakes, and I think wrestling fans are starting to notice it, and I think the big chink in the armor was Cody Rhodes leaving. He helped develop that business, and he decided, hey, you know what? This is not going the way I thought it was going to go. I gave you my thoughts. You don't agree, and I think it's time for me to go, let you run this into it. And as Pat likes to say all the time to me, the rise and fall of AEW is going to be phenomenal on Vice.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at some point in the next 5 years, absolutely. Real quick, just to segue away from the news, but Louis, I really want to pick your brain about this because certainly, we don't want to, cut our nose to spite our face here, but like anything else, whether it's YouTube, Blog Talk Radio, Spotify, with what you do with the Rican Wrestling Talk podcast, are we getting to a point now where there's an oversaturation of content and information when it comes to pro wrestling / sports entertainment discussions? I'm a big fan of Jim Cornette. I listen to Conan and Disco Inferno. I listen to Bischoff. I listen to Conrad once in a while. I listen to Pro Wrestling Torch with Wade Keller. I'm one of those guys. I watch a little bit of everything. I watch Impact. I watch WWE. I watch AEW. I watch MLW when it was on. I watch New Japan if possible. Are we getting to a point now in this media brand that it's almost maybe an oversaturation? Like, what's your experience been running your podcast, and what's the most two things? What's the most fulfilling aspect of your show, and what's the most laborious aspect of it?
Well, what I will say is I started my show, like what I started doing was I jumped onto the TikTok, and I started to post my own feelings about wrestling, but I try to steer away from like pointing out like who I prefer to go over for certain things. I just like to point out like what makes sense. And what I will say, like the comments you get back or the feedback you get back from fans, it does seem like there's an oversaturation. But what I love about, like you bring up like the Conan show, I think what he does is really brilliant because he tries to let you in, like behind the curtain. He's letting you know, like, this is why this makes sense. It's just that right now, no wrestling fans want to hear that. They're just like, I want my guy to go over, and if he doesn't go over, I'm going to go to the show and I'm going to chant, this is bullshit. And I think that's the biggest issue that we have with wrestling fans today. But the actual media, like Jim Cornette, Wade Keller, I listen to those guys as well. And I think that we need those guys. We need guys like that to help, like, temper expectations, to let people know, hey, this isn't always going to work out. You're not always going to get your stuff, but just enjoy the show. It's long-term booking. Nothing is just like overnight. We're not going to have Matt Riddle beat Seth Rollins this early because right now Seth Rollins is the biggest name in the business, and he's the best in the world right now. And the guy can lose and still be the top guy on Raw. But a guy like Riddle, he needs work. So having Seth Rollins go over on him, it makes sense. You know what I mean? So that's what I love about those shows that we watch, or that we listen to. And that's kind of what I try to do as well. Is I try to help just kind of let people know, like, everything, it has a purpose. And Triple H is a big proponent of long-term storytelling. He's not going to give you something and then take it away from you right away. You're going to have to sit and wait. You're going to have to be patient.
Oh, well said. Well said, Louis, for sure. Guys, let's get into the ratings real quick here. This past week, AEW Dynamite emanating from the campus of Temple University in West Philadelphia. Born and raised, first week in about 6 weeks that AEW did not do 1 million, slightly under 990,000 as opposed to the previous week during Grand Slam, where they got 1.039. The week before was 1.175. Right after All Out, literally the week of Labor Day, 1.035. End of August, we had 1.02 and also 1.04. It's weird, guys, where this is a show they kind of promoted, right? Chris Jericho won the Ring of Honor title. That was sort of prominently featured. Again, they're trying to get that over with that audience because obviously Tony Khan wants to get a TV deal for Ring of Honor. Whether that translates, I don't know, but they promoted this show heavily. I saw a lot of ads on CBS, TNT the week of, less than 1 million. I think it's, once again, it's an alarming trend. Pat and I have talked about this. In 2021, out of the 52 weeks, they had 12 weeks where they had over 1 million. Thus far in 2022, now they're still stuck on 8. I get it. You might say, Fernando, it's 3 months to go, but the NBA's returning in a couple of weeks. The NHL starts. Baseball playoffs on TBS and TNT. You still have the NFL on Thursday nights. I mean, it just seems like that audience is going to get stretched even thinner, and they can't afford that, Louis. Again, AEW's a niche product for a niche audience, and still, again, not getting over a million. I mean, a healthy million. I don't want to hear 1.001. We need to start seeing 1.3s, 1.4s. That might not be realistic the way this product's booked, Lewis.
No, I agree with you there. I think the baseball playoffs are really going to hurt it, and I think they're lucky enough that they don't have any shows on the nights where like football's going on, because I think that would really hurt this business. What I will say is, you bring up the NBA, like that takes away time from them, because if you remember dating back to last year, whenever the NBA was on, Dynamite would have to be on at a later time or even a different day. So I don't see these ratings coming back right now. Plus, I think there's a lot of bad press out there with the whole like EVP situation and CM Punk, and people really don't want to hear that stuff. They're just like, I just want to tune in and watch this stuff, because whether you like it or not, or whether anybody likes it or not, CM Punk is over. And he's one of the most popular guys in the past 10 years, and him not being on TV, I think, hurts. If I'm a casual wrestling fan and I turn on and I'm like, where's CM Punk? Like, what if there's a whole fan base who watches AEW and they don't read the dirt sheet? They're just like, dude, where's CM Punk at? Where are the Young Bucks at? Where's Kenny Omega? Like, they don't know that those guys have been suspended. They don't know that they're at home. All they know is that they're not injured. So they should be working.
Well, to quote, yeah, I'm here. I'm here with you. To quote, former UFC great and future Hall of Famer Nate Diaz, I'm not surprised, motherfucker. I just feel like this was inevitable. I mean, the guy has not known what to do when he's had the opportunity to do it. Every time that it comes down to Tony Khan having to strike when the iron's hot, he doesn't. He walks away. I don't know. Maybe he does a line. He fixes his hair. Who knows what he's doing? Twirls his dad's mustache. We don't know. You know what I mean? But this guy's not promoting his wrestling company the way that he should. And he continues to suffer the consequences, and he'll continue to suffer the consequences when there's better things than his wrestling program, his quote-unquote wrestling program, on TV.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's an issue that's going to continue to plague AEW. Moving on to the Raw ratings this week, they went up slightly from the week before. Obviously, we all know that once Monday Night Football started, we were going to be seeing some prominent matchups, right? We saw opening week with, Russell Wilson going to Seattle to play the Seahawks. That was a prominent game, and that certainly, again, that dropped the Raw rating a little bit, because Raw had been doing 2 million plus for some time. I mean, right after SummerSlam, arguably like the very first week of Paul Levesque being in, creative control after WrestleMania, after SummerSlam, we saw 2.23 right after SummerSlam. We saw a lot of 2 million plus in September. No surprise. Obviously, once Monday Night Football started, we had compelling matchups. The following week, we had, the Eagles and Vikings. This past Monday, we had a prominent, rivalry. We had my Cowboys going to MetLife, beating the Giants. And the last few weeks on Raw, we had 1.7 on September 12th. We had 1.5 dropping significantly during that, and then it went up a little bit again to 1.67. But this is just a product, again, for 30 years. WWF/WWE has had to deal with Monday Night Football. Listen, folks, it's nothing to panic about. They've known this for decades. They've planned accordingly. They're still going to get their audience. It's as simple as that. If it's a bad Monday night game, which sometimes it is, it hasn't been lately for the first 3 weeks of the NFL season in 2022, but at some point maybe it will be. But guess what? Coming up on Raw, there's a lot of great storytelling and a lot of great presentation. That Raw rating isn't anything to be concerned about, despite what fickle marks or people that are critical of WWE, Lewis and Pat, want to make it out to be.
Yeah.
Hello?
Okay. Your thoughts?
Oh, no, I thought Pat was going to go on there. I thought he was going to go. No, I agree with you. I think that people panic very quickly, and I think what people need to do is just enjoy what's happening right now. And I think, I disagree with you. I think the Monday night games have been pretty bad, but I do think that wrestling fans, they know when to tune in, they know when not to tune in, and as Pat used to say all the time with Vince McMahon, you're going to complain all you want, but on Monday night you're going to watch anyway. You know what I mean? So correct. I think it's one of those things where it doesn't matter. I think people just enjoy complaining. That's what's happened.
Okay, understood. And it's one of those things where I think that you look at it from a perspective that I think is primarily about looking at the ratings, right? And for example, looking also at the Smackdown ratings these past few weeks. Again, strong numbers. It's on Fox. It's a national network that's going to get good numbers. And again, this past, we don't know last night's number, but the previous week, 2.535, an amazing number, really an amazing number. Since the Castle show, September 16th, we had 2.2. On September 9th, literally, quite honestly, the night, I think the day before, well, not the day before the Castle show, but 2.367 the night before the Castle show on September 2nd. SmackDown continues to be very well presented, and not every SmackDown's had Roman Reigns. They've had the Bloodline. They've had that ongoing saga with Sami Zayn and the Bloodline, and other good bookings. We're seeing Karrion Kross, and thankfully, again, every heterosexual male is rejoicing nationally seeing Scarlett on their TV screen, even though she botches a fireball like Hulk Hogan did in Halloween Havoc in '98. But, we're seeing strong numbers from SmackDown. That's not going to change anytime soon with the way that it's being presented. Guys, your thoughts? Pat.
Agreed.
Pat, you with us here? I'm not sure if Pat, you with us? Okay, but Pat might have to call back here. I'm not sure if, let me see. Pat, if you're listening, call back, Pat. I'm not sure if you can hear us here. Okay. Pat, not sure if you can hear us here. Lewis, again, we'll have Pat call back into the show as well. I think he'll be calling back in a moment if we can get him back on here. But again, these ratings are what they are, Lewis, and I think that fans can get a little concerned about what it means. I think fans can get a little, I would say, fickle about what the presentation, I think, overall entails. And I think that, the numbers are going to be the numbers. Again, we're seeing strong presentation from WWE on both Monday nights, Tuesday nights, and Friday nights. AEW is still going to continue to struggle. I think Pat's back with us. Pat, you're back with us here. Pat, you back with us?
Yo, am I here?
Yep.
Yeah, you're here.
You're back with us. Okay, good stuff.
Fucking hell. I thought it was just letting me listen to the show. Let me tell you something, bro. This cat is a real piece of shit. I actually like her, though, but I owe her $20 and she accidentally hung up the phone on me. Can you believe this crap? I take this animal in. She was homeless. Unbelievable. Anyways, sorry, fellas.
So, no, that's okay. So guys, we're about to wrap up here. We got a little bit of time left here on the show. Louis, a popular thing we do on this show every week for some time is looking at on this day in pro wrestling history. Some interesting dynamics here to sort of go back here and how wrestling, I think, has changed to some extent. On this day in pro wrestling history, for example, just some interesting info here. For example, we're looking at for example, here in 1992, a very, very interesting dynamic because it really started leading down the path of what ultimately would pass for him in 1982. Kerry Von Erich was sentenced on 6 felony counts of prescription forgery. He received a 10-year suspended sentence, 10 years of supervised probation. We all know what happened to him. Some months later, he violated the probation. And then subsequently, unfortunately, just a few months right after October the 1st, 1982, Kerry Atkinson, a.k.a. Kerry Von Erich, committed suicide. I would argue one of the bigger names, the brighter names that we thought was going to really turn into something big in the business. A sad day in professional wrestling history back in 1992 with not just what happened with Kerry Von Erich, but soon thereafter.
Wow.
Yeah, it's freaking tragic, man. I mean, that whole family, man. It's like, so strange, but, you know, unfortunately, man, guy got mixed up with the wrong things, man. And you know, being a top star or having the potential to be a top star and actually being one, you know, it's two different things. I mean, we've seen so many guys throughout the years that everybody's been like, man, this dude's money. And then a couple months later, nobody sees from him, nobody hears from him, he's gone, he's off TV. But unfortunately, you know, he might be one of those cases, and really sad, really sad situation.
It really, really is. On another note, on this day in wrestling history, 2002, Reuters featured an article containing sort of like the first ever public comments from Andre the Giant's daughter concerning her father's legacy after being recognized by WWE that year at WrestleMania. At the time, Robin Christensen really talked about, I think, not getting the credit that her father really should have gotten. And again, he was the first inductee into the WWF/WWE Hall of Fame in 1993. A really sad end of his life when we think about Andre Rousimov and what he meant to the business. You know, having the longest undefeated streak in the history of professional wrestling, dropping it to Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 3, ultimately kicking, not that Hulkamania wasn't popular, but really solidifying Hogan's place in pro wrestling history because of what that meant. Again, you know, it's a sad testament on this day back in 2002, really, you know, that finally we were starting to see, I think, a really good legacy being recognized about Andre the Giant, folks.
Yeah, I think oh, no, go ahead, Louis.
No, I was just going to say, if you think about, like, our families and stuff, the people that have introduced us to wrestling, like, Andre the Giant was always one of those, like, he was as popular as, like, Bruno Sammartino. Like, when people talk about him, he's always regarded as one of the greats, you know, so it was definitely, you know, it was definitely good to hear from his daughter.
It definitely was. And, folks, those are that's what happened on this day in pro wrestling history.
Oh, Fern, can I just chime in on that real quick?
Sure.
So, you know, it's good for his daughter. What's her name? Robin the Giant? Is that her name?
Robin Christensen, yeah.
Robin Christensen. Okay, well, she's Robin the Giant to me, even if she's not, because it's Andre's daughter, or Robin the Giant Jr., I don't know. But, you know, it's good that they're recognizing that. Andre was just, man, dude, he's such a huge part of wrestling. He's just, like, such a huge part of wrestling, like, major attraction. You watch his old matches, the shit that dude used to be able to do for a guy his size. And granted, it was probably pretty stiff, but, I mean, just the fact that he was even trying it, and just his look, everything about him. I want to fucking go to Grenoble in the French Alps because fucking Andre the Giant's from there, you know? Yeah, man, really good for Andre's family, and, yeah, Andre's a fucking legend, man. Absolutely.
Louis, before we let you go, man, we appreciate you being on the show here. Real quick, we appreciate your insight. We're looking forward to having you back on really, really soon here. I really enjoyed our conversation and breakdowns today about pro wrestling and really your insight here. Before we let you go, what can we look forward to on the Rican Wrestling Talk podcast in the immediate future?
Well, what you can look forward to is a perspective from two different sides, and hopefully open dialogue. Like I'm definitely I'm hoping to do what you guys do here and get a number that people can call into, and we can have a conversation. That was ultimately the whole reason for me doing this, is because I just love talking about pro wrestling. So that's pretty much what I love to do. I mean, all my free time, if it's not with my babies, it's definitely like watching wrestling, even watching old wrestling matches. If I could just point out real quick, you know, on this day in wrestling history too, if you feel like watching a good match on YouTube, go back and watch in 2005 Samoa Joe and Kobayashi. They tore the house down. So I mean, that happened today as well, back in 2005. So you can definitely look for things like that. Just thoughts from all over the business.
Oh, good stuff there. Pat, before we let everybody go here, what to look out for with you, man?
Louis, not to be a jerk, it was actually Kenta Kobashi, not Kobayashi. So yeah, that was a really huge match because Kenta Kobashi, obviously, you know, his feud with Mitsuharu Misawa It's like one of the most iconic feuds in the history of All Japan, in the history of wrestling. The matches those guys produced. His style is very hard-hitting style. Samoa Joe's hard-hitting style at the time. But yeah, that is an excellent match. And one of my favorite Ring of Honor matches, for sure. Yeah, nothing much coming up. Child Actors, we're going to be playing October 29th out at Jimmy's in Kearney. We're still kind of solidifying the rest of that lineup, but you'll be hearing about it real soon. Check out the Child Actors on Instagram. It's at _child_actors on Instagram there. I think we're on the Facebook gimmick too. We got a YouTube. Go check out our videos, our music there on YouTube, the Child Actors. You can also check out the Quarantine Sing-Along music video, and pretty much a wide variety of the kind of stuff that we do. And yeah, just, be good people, help each other, be nice, and, don't let the bed bugs bite.
All right, good stuff here. And folks, again, you can check out my Real Talk show on Monday nights, live at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on StreamYard, also on LinkedIn, as well as the Jersey First TV YouTube page. This Monday night, live at 6 p.m., I'm going to have the great Michael Simons. He's one of the State House reporters for New Jersey's 101.5 FM. He'll be on with me live on Monday night to break down the midterms, which House races are the most competitive in New Jersey. Today's political climate, and it'll be interesting to sort of get a perspective about him since he's such a seasoned and well-respected journalist in the New Jersey media echo chamber. So, again, check it out, folks, this Monday night on Real Talk with Fernando Uribe via Jersey First TV, also on YouTube and also on the LinkedIn page as well. I want to thank once again our amazing guest this week, Luis Rodriguez. Again, folks, you can check out the Rican Wrestling Talk podcast, available on Spotify. Share it. Again, folks, sharing is caring, and it's always important to do that. Again, write to the show, workinthemarks@gmail.com. If you have any suggestions about guests or topics we haven't covered, hey, workinthemarks@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow the show on Instagram, ladies and gentlemen, at @working_the_marks. Make sure you check out our own Instagrams. Pat, which is never shadow banned because he's basically just Instagramming cats and music, at Patty Rican, PADDYRICAN. Of course, you can check out my own Instagram when it's not shadow banned for, spreading truth, at the Fernando Zone. And also on Twitter, folks.
Quote unquote truth.
Our show at @working_marks. And also make sure you check out our own personal Twitters as well for Patrick, PBR, the PBR superstar, at Patrick SKVM. And also when Joe Dorsey's not shadow banning me on Twitter, you can check out at the Fernando Zone as well. Shout out to D Rotten for all the great work he does with the theme song, with monitoring our social media, with plugging our stuff on the different podcast platforms. And folks, always remember, if you're thinking about it when it comes to professional wrestling and sports entertainment, we're definitely talking about it here every single week on Blog Talk Radio, because he is New Jersey's premier wrestling analyst, the PBR superstar, and I am New Jersey's premier journalist, the Professor Fernando Uribe. And every single week, nobody does it better because we're always working the marks here on Blog Talk Radio. Folks, we'll see you next week here, and we got plenty to cover about WWE Extreme Rules and everything else going on in pro wrestling. In the meantime, take care of each other, and always remember, let's keep on talking.
Famcast Media, bitch. Famcast Media.